Is this a massive breach of privacy in India? Government leaders want to expand the world's largest biometric database and link more than 1 billion ID cards with mobile phones and bank accounts. Opponents are urging Supreme Court judges to say no. This is Inside Story. Hello there and welcome to the programme. I'm Laura Kyle. The world's largest biometric identity card system is in India. And if the government gets its way, the Aadhaar ID card system will soon be linked to mobile phones and bank accounts of more than 1 billion Indians. Government leaders say Aadhaar reduces identity theft, corruption and bureaucracy. Opponents say it's a taste of Big Brother, which violates everyone's privacy. Some have taken the government to the Supreme Court, which is expected to deliver a verdict by the end of the month. Judges are being asked, why should Indians give the government information in a neat little package? What if the system is hacked by a malicious group? The government website continues to describe Aadhaar as a voluntary programme, but some say that the government is coercing them to use it, and here's why. The first Aadhaar account was created in 2010 and has been slowly expanded across the nation ever since. At its most basic level, Aadhaar is about verifying identity, confirming age and gender, plus biometric details such as fingerprints and iris scans. But there have been reports of Aadhaar being tied to welfare benefits. No account means no rations. And now the government has said everyone needs to link their Aadhaar accounts to their mobile phone numbers by the 6th of February next year. And by the 31st of March next year, all citizens need to connect their bank accounts to the system or they will be frozen. Well, let's get the thoughts of our guests now. And joining us from New Delhi, Sanjay Kapoor, he's the editor of Hard News magazine. In Bengaluru, Alok Prasanna Kumar, Senior Resident Fellow at the Vidhi Centre for Legal Policy. And in London, Robert Toombs, founder and CEO of Yoti, which is a digital identity service. Welcome, gentlemen, all of you. Thanks for being here on Inside Story. And look, first of all, let's just get a little bit more of an idea about what Aadhaar actually is. I hadn't heard of it until I started reading about it today. I'm sure many of our viewers haven't heard of it because many people don't have this national identity card, all of their data being stored by the government. What data does the government have access to?
So before I begin, a couple of short disclaimers. I used to be legal counsel for the UIDAI, which is the authority in charge of Aadhaar, 2 years ago. I am part of an organization which has also helped the union government to draft the law which governs the Aadhaar. But today I'm speaking in a purely private capacity, speaking only on behalf of myself. But to get to what is Aadhaar, it is not just the technology. It is not just the technology and the code which collects the biometric details of an individual along with their personal details. Biometric details here include your fingerprints and your iris scans. It is also a system to store this information, how this information will be used, in what context, and to what extent. So the Aadhaar is supposed to be a unique ID for every person who wants it, which will contain all the details which can be verified, which can be easily verified. The reason is that the issue with what Aadhaar is essentially that there is also a card which is given to individuals which they can flash to say, this is who I am. The possible need for this is that there are a lot of IDs in India. It is not as if they were not enough. The issue was that several were local level and may not necessarily be used at all levels. You needed an ID for people who needed one. But at the same time, over the years, Aadhaar has expanded. Now, you have the body which has been set up to regulate and govern Aadhaar, which is the UIDAI. That is in charge of the biometric ID itself. But you have many governments, many authorities, and many agencies now demanding that you produce proof of your identification only through Aadhaar. This is somewhat problematic.
Absolutely. I just want to jump in there to pick up on an earlier point that you made. You were saying that it's available to every person who wants it. But of course, the crux of the matter today for our discussion here is that now it's going to be mandatory. And a lot of people are very unhappy with that.
Yeah. So just to come to that point, per se, it is not mandatory. That is, it is not as if every citizen, every resident of India is required to have it.
Not
what
yet.
has happened is that Not yet. What has happened is that a whole range of services and government related schemes require you to have an Aadhaar, to the extent that now it is almost necessary to have an Aadhaar, even though there is no exact legal requirement to have one, because you will need it for such a wide range of services. De facto, it becomes almost essential to have one.
Okay,
So it is,
Sanjay, do you
to that
have an
extent.
Aadhaar? Do you agree with everyone having this?
No, I think there are problems with it. I have an Aadhaar. I took an Aadhaar at the time when it was not mandatory, in the very early days when it was announced. And I just took it for a lark. I mean, I never thought that I'd really use it. But now everything is sought to be linked. Every service which has been rolled out, they are linking Aadhaar with it. For instance, mobile phone, for example, your bank account, everything is being made it mandatory. And it has become difficult for people who do not have it to access these services. And that is where I think the problem lies, that if you do not have an Aadhaar card, you are being denied, you are excluded from it. The exclusion part of Aadhaar is causing problems at different levels. For example, the midday meal which has been provided by the government of India, there the Aadhaar has been made mandatory. If you have been reading the newspapers, you will find that there was a child who was denied food because she did not have an Aadhaar card and she died. And that was really a great tragedy which unfolded in front of us, because technology, when it was impacting ordinary lives and with the way it behaves, is really a colossal disaster that was unfolding in front of us.
Alok, what's your response to that? Because whatever the advantages of this system are, I mean, if it's causing somebody to die, then it is clearly not working.
That's right. And I think exclusion is a real problem with the way Aadhaar has been applied and implemented. More than concerns of privacy, of course, everybody is talking about how much data is being collected through Aadhaar, whether it be used for surveillance and so on. I do think there is the issue of exclusion is the bigger one. Does somebody really need an Aadhaar to obtain something as basic as midday meals? The government says this is needed to stop leakage, but it doesn't seem to me that it's only by mandating Aadhaar that you will stop leakage. At the end of the day, Aadhaar is a tool. There needs to be a call taken within government. What do we really want people to use Aadhaar for? What do we want to make it mandatory for? And where should we just keep it optional, where if people want to, they can link it? So I completely agree that yes, there is a problem of exclusion because no thought is being put into what we should mandate the Aadhaar for and what we should.
Robin, give us an idea of what Yoti's involvement with Aadhaar and the Indian government in this sense is.
So Yoti is a free digital identity system. It's voluntary and it's high privacy. So you choose to use your passport or potentially consent through the Aadhaar system to create your own digital identity. And then you can share that information with organisations or individuals. So the important points are it's voluntary, and secondly that it's private. So we don't actually know who is using our system once they have onboarded. Instead, it's just the organisation and the individual who receive a receipt each, so that they legally know that the transaction has happened, but we don't need to know what has happened. So we think that's a very popular way of doing it.
Okay, and how potentially does this change Indians' use of the Aadhaar system?
Well, I think there may well be, sensible reasons why people have to use the Aadhaar system, because it is very difficult online for people to prove who they are, and it's very expensive for the Indian government or other businesses in India to kind of check who somebody is if they just let you fill in a web form. That's not a good way of knowing whether somebody is actually the correct person filling the form in. So I think there'll be times where, for that reason you have to use potentially the government system. But in many other cases, individuals will be able to choose. If you've got a buyer and a seller on a classified site, it really should be easy for me to basically say to the seller, I'd like to know your verified name. And if you're not prepared to give me that information, that would worry me, and I probably won't buy the goods off you. So sharing a name without having to share all of the other information, which would be on a passport or on the Aadhaar system, is a nice, tight data minimizing way, but you still get the same benefit and business becomes easier for people.
Sanjay, do you see this Yoti app, I believe it is, being able to replace some of the ways in which users have to use Aadhaar and therefore be able to protect some of their data and retain control over it?
You know, the major problem with the Aadhaar is that they have begun to seed different databases. For instance, for getting an insurance, it has become mandatory that you should have an Aadhaar card. For mobile services, again Aadhaar card. For bank services, again Aadhaar card. And there are multiple services where these biometric numbers have become very, very important. I mean, they have become mandatory. So there is a possibility that there may be an officer designated to look into, create certain kind of profile, use Aadhaar as a bridge between different databases, because they work in silos, and once those silos can be in a certain ways connected by a designated officer, it becomes very easy to have a profile of what exactly that person is doing. Something which was, was questioned at the time when this entire system was conceived. We feared that we probably have a government which would be more keen on surveillance, and they would resort to use of this data in such a manner that would make a citizen rather vulnerable. So in a certain way, you cannot really shake off your past. If you have made some kind of transgression which goes against the law of the land, you think that you could probably get a loan from the bank, you can just forget about it. You could, think that something, there'll be a past always chasing you. So that is a major fear, because it has created a surveillance ecosystem where it becomes, very easy for the state to keep track of practically everything. It's like really, as you stated earlier, the big brother would know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, one of the really interesting things that I read today was that you would have to use your Aadhaar, potentially your Aadhaar number, if you wanted to spend or make a purchase that cost more than $780. I mean, that seems to be an incredible infringement on privacy.
Absolutely. This is exactly what is likely to happen in every which way. And we have been seeing a great amount of intrusion which did not really exist earlier. I mean, if you, people have been getting income tax notices, people have been getting many of those, intrusion from inspector, because for quite a while when we were trying to, when the government was trying to initiate reform, one of the things that they were trying to fight is the intrusion of inspectors, and they, in a certain way, are staging a comeback. And Aadhaar could become one of those, factors which would, in a certain way, make it more targeted. And that is the reason why the matter is coming up in the Supreme Court. There was a privacy judgment which made privacy a fundamental right, and that Supreme Court rather cleverly and creatively tried to sidestep the Aadhaar issue from the privacy judgment, but now they have to bite the bullet. In the 3rd or 4th week of November, that matter is going to come up, and then they will have to take a decision about this. They have been procrastinating for some reason or the other, but then when they have to talk about it, a lot of things are going to fall in place.
Alok, what do you see the Supreme Court ruling to be?
It's difficult to say. I mean, I don't want to predict something without too much facts on record, but let me just put in a little bit of context. The 9-judge bench decision affirmed that there was a right to privacy. It unanimously affirmed that the right to privacy includes the right to informational privacy, that you will have control over the information over yourself. However, the judgment did clarify that, of course, like with every other right, the right to privacy is not absolute. There are certain grounds on the basis of which the right to privacy may be infringed. Or to say that the right to privacy does not extend to you saying, I will claim my right to privacy irrespective of any compelling state interest. Whether this compelling state interest exists in the context of income tax, maybe, we don't know. Does it exist in the context of banks? Maybe, we don't know. Does it exist in the context of your mobile phone numbers? Maybe, we don't know. The fact is that we have to listen to the arguments carefully and see how the state is trying to justify these. And this is really what the court will be looking at.
Okay.
In each individual case, is there a good reason to demand that everybody have an Aadhaar or link their Aadhaar to, say, the bank accounts, to phones, or to income tax returns. It can't be made as a blanket statement. There's no blanket statement to say that Aadhaar is an invasion of privacy, period. I think it'll have to be examined in the context of each measure for which it has been made mandatory. Is it mandatory? Is it necessary in under the Constitution for people to link Aadhaar to X or Y? I think that is really what the Supreme Court will decide,
Okay.
and we should know hopefully by the end of the year.
Robin, you've built a company based on the principle that an individual has the right to privacy over their information. So I'm wondering, does that put you at odds with the Indian government, whom you've gone into business with, when we're having this discussion about the Supreme Court having not yet ruled on privacy laws, and India not having a privacy law itself?
Well, I think, Laura, just looking at another country, in the UK, if you are a 17-year-old and you want to prove you're over 15 to go to the cinema, if they ask you to prove your age, you're going to have to show them your passport. If you are 19 and you want to go into a nightclub, you're going to have to get your driving license out or your passport. Your driving license, if they scan it on a machine, has your address. It has a lot of information about you, including the precious driving license number. You don't need to do that with a Yoti. You have to do it once, whether that be, for example, with an Aadhaar or with a passport. To get the benefit of more privacy, you have to initially verify your identity information. But the beauty after that for all of our users is you can just prove you're over 18, or you can prove that you are a name. But you don't have to give them your passport and an image of your passport to do that. And that's very difficult to do in the offline world if you haven't got a digital identity on your phone. So I think there'll be lots of people who think, well, as long as I believe it's a private system and they're not tracking me, then I need to basically prove to the system who I am, to then be able to use minimize data to prove who I am to other people or businesses or even the government.
Okay, but
so for
I
us,
get
it's
that,
very
but then
important
surely,
that the system is not tracked.
Still, you are going into business with a system that is being accused of being an infringement on people's private rights.
Well, remember our system is completely voluntary. You don't have to use Aadhaar. You could use your passport in India. Obviously, not everybody has a passport. But if you choose to basically use your Aadhaar with consent to basically create a Yoti, you can then use a completely private Yoti to do your business in India, whether that be with individuals or with organisations. And we believe for many people, they will voluntarily choose to do that because of the privacy and the lack of tracking of the information and a much more limited amount of information that they need to give. So in the UK, supermarkets will be able to check that you are over 18, but they won't need to know your name.
Okay.
And they won't need to know your address to
Alok,
do that.
is this something that you would be interested in using? I believe you have to have a smartphone to do so, but would you be interested in getting Yoti onto your phone?
First and foremost, I don't have an Aadhaar.
Right.
So, well, I do have a passport. I do have a passport. But yes, I don't have an Aadhaar. It sounds interesting, but the point with the Aadhaar is not the private sector use problem. I don't think too many people have issues with using Aadhaar, to verify their identity. The issue comes, and as he just pointed out, when they collect this Aadhaar data about you. Now, technically, it is against the law, and there are already provisions in the law which prevent people from keeping track of your Aadhaar number or using your Aadhaar card as your identity, because it can be it's not supposed to be like a passport which can't be easily duplicated. It's a basic document which just all the details are already there. So of course, I think a technology like this could help in ensuring that the Aadhaar is more secure. But the basic problem comes to, again, still what we just discussed and what Sanjay also said. How to ensure the government makes use of this in a sensible manner? How does it use this in a manner which does not infringe too many people's rights? How to ensure that it does not result in like a surveillance state? I think that is the real question, and that will not, to me personally, it is not something that technology can fully solve. You can improve the technology, definitely. You can improve the systems around the technology. But at the end of the day, you will need a solid legal structure. You will need a solid law with proper institutions tasked with ensuring that your data is used properly and not misused or leaked.
Well, even, Alok, with so many questions still being asked, other countries are eyeing similar systems. We've got the Moroccan delegation visiting New Delhi just last week to study the identity program. Indian diplomats say Russia, Algeria and Tunisia are asking about how the system works. Indonesia already has its own version of Aadhaar. Biometric cards are needed to obtain SIM cards or to use the government healthcare system. Several countries, such as Bulgaria and Brazil, have also issued biometric ID cards. Others are sceptical. Britain scrapped a plan for a national identity register 7 years ago after concerns about privacy and civil rights. Now, Sanjay, we've heard from the World Bank chief economist that Aadhaar could be good for the world if it's widely adopted. It gives everybody an identity. We've got 1.5 billion people in the world who can't prove who they are. Do you agree with that?
I'm not very sure. Indian experience cannot be replicated in different parts of the world. In India, you have a bureaucracy which is still mired in the 1950s and the 60s, and you're trying to use that bureaucracy to implement this technology. There is a huge mismatch. I mean, if you go by newspaper reports, which do not get the kind of primacy that it deserves, there are a number of villages in the central Indian state of Maharashtra which have the same biometric number. Like the entire village has one biometric number. This is preposterous. And because of this reason, the farmers cannot get loans. And then you have multiple problems, like there has been so much of exaggeration in terms of the benefits that Aadhaar is getting in terms of identifying ghost beneficiaries of government programs. People say, the government would say that they will save about $9 billion, but there is no way to unbundle these claims and these numbers. And the only cost-benefit analysis of Aadhaar was done in 2010 when there was no database. So, there is, I think, a bit of a problem. And as somebody very wisely said, that the revenue model of the internet is surveillance, and biometric in a certain way fits into this entire, this concept. So I'm rather unsure, and I don't like the very idea that, people could be reduced to number and they do not have the freedom that they would have in terms to sidestep the prying eyes of the state. So World Bank assertion notwithstanding, I can't be very comfortable with the idea.
Okay. Alok, it seems that there's no turning back. I mean, if the Supreme Court ruling rules that it is mandatory for you to link your Aadhaar number to your mobile phone, you're going to have to get one, otherwise you'll be cut off.
I guess so, yes.
Absolutely. And so it's very difficult, isn't it, to roll these things back once they're out. And of course, the problem with the UK is that there was this massive fear of mission creep. Just as Sanjay was saying, where does it stop? How much information does the government need to know? Will it know? And one wonders where it's going to end.
You're right. One wonders where it's going to end. But let's not also forget this. The government already collects information about us in 100 different ways. Speaking for the Indian experience, I am pretty sure that the local police station probably will have more information about you than the central government sitting in Delhi. So it's not as if surveillance happens only because of Aadhaar, or Aadhaar has allowed the governments to do something they couldn't do before. If we saw the kind of surveillance techniques that are available with the NSA, with other governments in the world, this is nothing. But leaving that aside, I think essentially the Aadhaar debate should be one about, is this tool worth what we are spending on? It may seem difficult to roll back. It may seem difficult to, but I don't see why not. If, again, at the end of the day, it's for the court, of course, because the matter is pending, to see is it necessary to have the Aadhaar for accessing X, Y, and Z service. Tomorrow, it is probably worthwhile if the government has this conversation internally and with the public. Where should we actually use the Aadhaar and what should it be used for? What will be the case where it is used in the interest of the public and where it does not make sense to use it and may actively harm public interest? It's difficult to make a very broad and overgeneralized. As I've said before, it's difficult to make a broad argument either way to say Aadhaar will be good in every situation or Aadhaar will be bad in every situation.
And there are many questions left to be answered. We will be very interested in seeing what the Supreme Court rules towards the end of this year. Be keeping a close eye on that. For the moment, though, we do have to end our discussion. Many thanks to all of you for joining us. Sanjay, Kapoor, Alok, Prasanna, Kumar and Robin Toombs. And thank you too for watching. You can see the programme again anytime by visiting our website, that's aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, do go to our Facebook page, that's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Laura Kyle, and the whole team here, bye for now.